Hey guys, John here. Today we're in Avenger 2, and today we're going to make one of my favorite types of bass arps. I don't know why this sounds so good to my ear, but I always come back to this patch because I think it sounds really good, and I want to share that with you guys today. So let's go to Menu and Initialize, and this is going to be more of a slower tempo, although you can use it at different ones, but today we're going to be in 106. So we're going to start off with a saw wave, and we're going to bring our mix all the way up for a unison, and then for our voices, we're going to go all 7. So we have something kind of like that there. And then for our panning, we don't want this completely wide. We kind of want to bring this in a little bit. Maybe something like that. And then bring the detune a little bit to our left so it's not too detuned. So that's what we're going to be starting off with. And then also let's route this to our ARP, which is nothing crazy for now. We're going to go and maybe change a couple things in here. But for now, this should be okay. So this is where we should be at now. Okay, so for our filter, there's a lot of cool ones. I think the best one sounding for this is going to be the Analog Pass 24. And let's bring our cutoff pretty substantially low right here, and then increase our envelope. Now, depending on how much high frequency content you want in this bass here, that's going to be determined by this envelope knob. So the more you want, so crank this a little bit higher. Or if you want a little bit more muted, you can do something kind of like that. So really the spot of the cutoff and the envelope, you're going to have to kind of play with to find the exact sound that you want, but those are going to be pretty important settings there. Next, we want a little bit of resonance. So we're at 0 by default, and maybe 4 to 5 is probably as much as we want. Something kind of like that. And then maybe a little bit of drive if we're feeling a little crazy. And then we can maybe go to oversampled. Okay, so we're in a pretty good spot here. Now for this here, let's bring down our sustain and then kind of dial in our decay to see how much we wanted that. And you can always leave a little bit of sustain if you want that as well. Really up to you. Okay, so this is what we're starting off with. So now we need to do some EQ, some compression, maybe some other effects as well to spice this thing up here. So for the first one, I like to reach for the EQ, open this guy up, and there's 2 ways we can do it. So one of the first ones, we can go and we can do a high pass. We can kind of bring this around maybe 50 or so like that, and then crank the width, which is going to give us a nice little bump on the low end there. So that's one way we can do that, or we can just go to normal and we can go to a peak. And maybe find something right there where it kind of sounds nice on the low end. And then widen up our Q just a little bit. Might be a little too much, maybe somewhere here. And then take some of that mud out. So that stuff. Bring that down just a little bit. And remember, we don't want to take out too much of this because the more you take out, it kind of falls apart. So just a little bit of reduction is okay. 2-3 dB at most, something like that. And then for the top end, I kind of always like going to this type here and then adding a high shelf. So we get that nice highs, then we get that nice lows as well. And then next, we're going to squash this here with a compressor. So ratio 8:1, something like that. And then bring down our threshold. So now this is going to enhance a little bit more of the top frequency. So once we have our compressor and our EQ in, then we can also go back to the envelope knob and kind of dial that in a little bit. So we have this here. Now, what's some other things that we can add to this? So personally, I do like adding a little bit of dimension here. Now, a little bit is like maybe 12 in the mix, and then I'll obviously take out some of that low end there. And maybe kind of cut in the high end or take out the high end a little bit. So here's without it, and then with it. Always kind of like adding that in there as well. And then we can add a delay. And remember, with delays, we want to take out all that low end. We don't want to delay our low end stuff. Now, it really depends how the timing, because this ARP here once we're kind of playing it, we don't really hear so much of the delay. So it's kind of cool if we maybe go to an 8th dotted note. I always personally think that sounds kind of cool. Maybe a little bit more in the mix. Okay, so we have something kind of like this right now. Now we can go to our drums and kind of see how this sounds and turn the sequence on and see how this sounds, I guess, in context with stuff. So we're going to go into the newest expansion, the Ballermania 1, and we're going to maybe check out, let's see, a couple of these drum kits. So Big Dance 1 sounds actually really cool. And another thing we can do is start adding a little bit of that pumping effect. Now we can do this a couple different ways. So one of the first ways is down here at the bottom of the stack. We can right click this and then we can say, okay, let's go to our mini chain. And for the sync, let's go for the sequence bass drum. Oh my God, I pressed spacebar. Here we go. Which definitely sounds pretty cool. We can dial in our mix however we want. What's even nice too, we can bring our mix all the way to 0 and maybe grab one of our macros, drag and drop this guy, and then give it full depth. So we can really decide how we want that. Maybe label this side chain. So it has that pumping effect, which is kind of cool. Another way we can do this is if we disable this for now and we go back to our ARP, sometimes we can remove these first ones here like that, and it kind of gives us a very similar effect. So it really depends on which way you want to go about that. And then maybe in here, you can maybe go an octave on maybe some of these like that, or maybe every other one. Maybe bring this one up. So that's definitely kind of a cool sound there. So it depends really if you want to remove these first ones or do the sidechain. That's really up to you in that sense. Some other stuff we can add is maybe some wave shapers, things like that as well. Or another cool thing, we can go into the trig. I know we haven't really dove into the trig category too much, but what we could do is maybe say, you know, every time that we have a note hit, once we have a note on or something like that, we can trigger a certain sample. That's something we can do. So it's really not too difficult. We go here, note on. We can go here and pick maybe in the factory clicks some of these to trigger while we play some notes. So let's mute this here and then go to our OS, disable our ARP so we can kind of hear this a little bit better. So it's going to be that guy. Mute these. Now, this is kind of like nitpicky stuff, but it definitely adds a little bit to the vibe, I think. And if you do go this route, something also to keep in mind. So if we go down here to edit in the key track, we maybe want to bring this down to 0 because we might not want these different attacks or transients to change pitch as our notes change pitch. Because in this sense, we're kind of trying to simulate a pick hitting a string or something kind of like that, an attack of a sound. And sometimes we don't really want that pitch. So that's something to keep in mind. So for now, we're just going to disable this, but I did want you guys to know that that option is there. Enable our stuff, bring back our ARP, and we have a pretty cool bass like that. So for some reason, I always kind of come back to make this bass. It's very simple to make, but it just sounds so good. It's a couple different things. Some unison, bring back our panning so it's a little more in the center, some envelope modulation with this low pass 24, and then doing some EQ compression, a little bit of expansion and delay, and then some pumping here. So again, let's look at the different versions. So let's turn these back on, these first ones, and then let's enable our mini chain. And let's bring down our macro. So this is kind of default. Which it sounds cool, it kind of fits, but as we increase the sidechain, it kind of almost sounds like the drums and the bass are kind of working together. So that's kind of cool as well too. So you can do this on a macro, so on a knob, to determine how much you want of that. Also, something before we let you go here, what we can do as well, if we have this mixed at 0, we can actually use a button if you just want the full value. And then we just bring this up to 100. So we turn on the button and it goes to 100. We can do that as well. So we'll label this a sidechain. So here's 0. Now, if you like working with a button better, which I kind of like that sometimes as well, and you don't want this to be too strong, then you just change the value here maybe to like 75, something like that. So when you turn this on, it's going to be 75 as opposed to the full 100. But yeah, there you go. Try to make this bass yourself, and you're going to have a lot of fun times doing this and, experiment with different racks, different effects. There's a lot of stuff to go through. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one.